Welcome to the June 1st, 2026 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission. I hereby call this meeting to order. My name is Blake Cameron. I am chair of the Wayzata Planning Commission. First on the agenda is roll call. I would note that all commissioners are present, as well as Director Sharp and City Attorney Schalzel. Next on the agenda tonight is approval of tonight's agenda. Does anyone have any questions or proposed changes for tonight's agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Severson. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Looy. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes, and the agenda is approved. Next on the agenda tonight is approval of tonight's consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda consists of 3 items: the meeting minutes from May 18th, a Planning Commission report and recommendation of approval for a zoning text amendment to Chapter 950, and another one to Chapter 936, which is the tree preservation and general zoning district provisions. Does any commissioner have any questions or comments on any of the item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Elg. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Planton. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes, and the consent agenda is approved as presented. Next on the agenda tonight is old business and public hearing, and there are none. So with that, we will move right into number 7, other items. Director Sharp, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Cameron. As the memo for this item states, traditionally in the past, the Planning Commission had seen a yearly report going through the significant work that the Commission puts in each year, reviewing the projects, the deliberations you have, and giving a high-level outline. This practice was actually suspended around the 2017-2018 timeframe, largely in concert with a larger citywide report. However, as I'm really getting my sea legs here, getting used to Wayzata, yes, that was a pun. I am trying to bring forward some of this because I do want to celebrate and recognize what the Planning Commission has done over the year, how that compares to past years, and recognize the amount of work and deliberations and how City Council takes those deliberations and uses them when they make their final decisions on these projects. Because I think it's a really important thing for the Planning Commission to see. You've got a copy of the report in the packet. I'm going to be going through it relatively quickly here, sticking to some of the higher level commercial projects, every once in a while delving into some of the more in-depth residential projects that you've done, but generally sticking to that commercial side. So if you do have questions or want to additional details on some of the residential stuff, happy to do so. So the first piece is that I really want to highlight, this was our first crack at this in 6, 7, 8 years kind of thing. And so some of the terminology we want to refine a little bit closer to better reflect. For example, development applications may be refined into what the individual actions within an application might be. So when we say that we received 12 total applications, there might be 29 different actions: a variance, a PUD amendment, a PUD general plan, et cetera, within that. So you might need a variance and a conditional use permit, and et cetera, within the same application. There are some applications, such as the Excel Energy monopole that we went through, that was simply a single application, conditional use permit for the use. There may be design deviations that need to be baked into that. Some of the more complex projects that you've seen, 200 Lake, Walzer Lamborghini as examples, have quite a few actions within them, sometimes as much as up to 6, 7, 8. In 2025, the Planning Commission saw 29 development application, or development review is what I think I'm going to start trying to refer to it for the remainder of this presentation. You reviewed 29 individual actions that needed to be under the Planning Commission's purview and had different criteria for each of them. Those were contained within 12 different full applications or 12 different sites. They're broken out in this table here, with variances being by and far the largest that you see coming forward. That's because a lot of times our single family properties are applying just for variances, of which we had 3 to 4 just for fences. last year. And then you're also getting variances on things like Walzer Lamborghini or other larger projects as well. So they compound, and that's why you're seeing that one as probably the most significant one that the Planning Commission reviews and why you're so familiar with those criteria. As we go down, we see conditional use permits, design deviations, and then we have tried to bring forward some text amendments to help clean up like you had previously on the agenda. Obviously, those were not the ones considered because this is just for 2025. But the city has brought forward amendments, and we bring those forward whenever we can have a relatively non-controversial, easy cleanup of code. And so you'll start seeing that more and more frequently when I see that I have the opportunity to bring something forward. I've got projects staged, working for them and waiting for those opportunities, particularly on nights like tonight where there's limited amounts on the agenda, and I want to make sure that I'm using your time effectively. Additionally, the one piece that I want to call out is that staff often, and in prior years have had a lot more of these in 2025, gets withdrawn applications. So we've completed significant parts of our review. Often the Planning Commission has reviewed the full review of that project. And then sometimes due to your recommendation, they withdraw before they get final action on City Council. So that does occur. It can affect the total number stats when you start seeing approvals. So don't think that our math is that poor just because we're planners. So this helps summarize a little bit more generally what happened with those requests, the approvals versus denials. So on the left-hand column, the total number of requests, there were 24 that went forward to full recommendation of approval. And this is just at Planning Commission. This is not at the City Council level, to be clear. This is Planning Commission's report, and it would reflect differently. The numbers would shift if we went to City Council. The number of recommendations for denial was total 5. So we are at a pretty good level of, we're certainly approving more of the individual application requests than we are moving forward with recommendations of denial. In terms of some of our key commercial projects that you saw, probably the biggest of 2025, as you're all aware, was the 200 Lake Street, former TCF headquarters. This one has some odd nomenclature, but as you can see, the number of requests behind this one was significant. It made up a lot of your individual numbers of that 24 to 29 that we were referring to, simply because of the complexity of that project. And as we're looking at prior years, of which we looked at 2024 and have within this report, but as I look at 23, 22, 21, what we found is we had some pretty significant requests between with lots of complex reviews in this year between 200 Lake and then the Walzer Lamborghini being some of the bigger ones, but even some of the smaller ones had multiple different steps to it. In this one of the nomenclature where we wanted to make make the commission specifically aware of is that City Council supported the recommendation of denial for the massing breaks, even if they did so in a slightly different manner than the Planning Commission did. So if you recall, staff had helped guide what our interpretation of the massing breaks were going to be. Staff had 3 massing breaks versus 2, and then council said they needed to be full massing breaks. Well, as it works out, council still supported the action that Planning Commission took. So while I know that some concern had been expressed for a little while on whether City Council was utilizing a lot of the work from the Planning Commission, I think that it was foundational in their decision making, and I think these records will help show it. As I've mentioned, we also had Walzer Lamborghini and the redevelopment of 1022 and 1042 Wayzata Boulevard East. This actually only came forward as a concept plan. So single action in 2025. Well, it was one of your more complex reviews because of the number of individual items that it would take. Their formal application for PUD general plan didn't come forward until 2026. And so you'll see it in next year's report, but this review really set up City Council and helped guide the removal of the mulberries from that site that was overly packed, and in my opinion, led to a significantly better development. And I think that a lot of that was heard from the Planning Commission and City Councils that went through. So your work was essential in bringing forward an application that I think was ultimately successful and a much better product. And it's one of the reasons why I want to highlight that our concept plan allows for that type of work. 401 Lake Street East, brick and linen was a variance for the amount of retail. This was the second variance applied for on this property for the same use, wanting to go down from 50% retail or commercial service commercial uses. And the Planning Commission unanimously actually recommended denial on this one, and City Council also followed suit. One of the larger projects and kind of fun projects that we got to see right upon my start was the retreat. And now we've moved into institutional developments, just so you're aware. These are no longer commercial as we drift out of those. And what the design deviations were specifically for is where HVAC could be located. So they were very cognizant of what the requirements were. However, older buildings, new design, tighter sites, not wanting to take out trees led to some design deviations to allow for some rooftop mechanical, but they were fully screened. I'm not going to go through a lot of our residential developments. I do want to highlight 565 because there was a significant amount of work on both City Council and Planning Commission side. And the other reason is I wanted to be able to explain the denial approval piece of this one. Once Planning Commission had brought forward their recommendation of approval, that was under the current code standards. And where City Council had expressed concern was, do our current code standards meet what we're wanting to see? And so we brought back some of those text amendments you saw and revised the code. And then once that had been done, City Council saw the project again and was able to approve that final plat. So the text amendments were in between that, though, but your work and your concerns and the concerns being expressed by the commission helped guide the City Council through that process and decision-making. They referred to it quite often. Everybody's going to be wondering why Excel Energy ended up in residential. I was debating putting this up in the commercial projects, but the property is technically zoned for residential, and this is a permitted use within residential zones for an electrical substation, with monopoles being a conditional use. Ultimately, this was the withdrawn application, one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight it. They brought this forward more than once to the Planning Commission and ultimately withdrew on both occasions due to your recommendation. So you were able to, through your guidance, say, we don't feel like this use fits. And by the time City Council was at review, that did not proceed forward based upon your recommendation. And I wanted to make sure that I highlighted this project because it really highlights how valued your opinion is, not only by the City Council and staff, but I think it's foundational to those applicants that listen.
You know, did they go to Plymouth with that same request
Chair,
or a different site?
I know they went to a different site. Where they ended up landing on, I did not follow up on communication. It wasn't Wayzata, and
Fair enough.
I knew they needed to find a different home. I now want to go into kind of the comparison from year to year, and I'll be able to elaborate a little bit more on some of the prior years, but those years we don't have full assessment on in here. So actually, I'm going to skip right down to the table here because while I'm a visual learner, I really like this figure 4 table. And it shows that we had slightly more applications, not very many in terms of the 10, 12, but in those 12, we had a lot of the development application requests, and that's what we're seeing in 2026 as well. One of the real oddities to 2025 is that when you look at when the applications came in, the first third of our year saw all but like 4 applications. So we were heavily loaded from January till about April, May timeframe. We got a few in June, and then they started to trickle off. And I think that's what we saw into the beginning of 2026 as well. So we met semi-frequently because staff brought forward some of the text amendments and things of that nature, and we saw some of the same projects more than one time. But the actual applications were very front-loaded into 2020 or in 2025. In 2024, they were spread out largely evenly throughout the year. And as you go back to 2023, this is where it puts us a little bit to shame in that we had 24 applications in 2023. And that's That's the full application with all the actions. That is actually standard for the metro region when you look around. There was so much pent-up demand from 21, 22, and these projects take time to come forward that 23 was a bumper year for most communities. And in those years, Planning Commission is going to be busy, and you guys did great work. We will look at trying to provide some of that compilation in future years for greater detail, but it'll likely be in a table like this rather than going through the individual projects of that nature. 2022 only saw 12 applications. So again, we went back down to a more standard application level. And 2020 and 2021 were very, very odd years that by the tail end of 2020, we had very few applications. So that's where that one becomes an outlier and not very useful in the measuring of the Planning Commission's workload. I do like this table as it shows that we have a fair amount of residential projects come forward. That trend is going to continue with plats actually coming forward. You're going to see residential plat applications more and more right now, and they're going to be some of the more difficult ones in some cases, as you've already seen in 2026. They are infill developments, and they are spurred by the property values that you're seeing in Wayzata. If you can meet minimum lot standards, people are going to want to subdivide. And I think that trend is going to continue, and you're going to start seeing more of it. Additionally, what you're going to start seeing, and I actually just said to a neighborhood group that we were meeting with prior to this meeting, is you're going to start seeing some infill developments that may not need to come before Planning Commission and City Council. Your difficult lots with weird grades or odd configurations of wetland, shoreland, et cetera, are going to start coming forward. Those lots that have sat for sale for just slightly too long, you're going to see the demo and a building permit issued on. And some of that disruption to the neighborhood is difficult, and we understand it. And I encourage the Planning Commission and the public to, in general, reach out to us, let us know where there are issues so that we can respond to them and try to correct any behaviors that we need to. That's slightly out of the Planning Commission purview, but I do want to make sure, because I hear you, that a lot of the public comes to you as a comfortable person to speak with about city concerns. And so feel free to refer those to us in the Community Development Department. We'll take it from there. If a code enforcement complaint is found, we open a case. The piece that I want to make sure you're all aware of is once a code enforcement case is open, we are not reporting on status. We just move forward with a code enforcement case until completion. In terms of the platting and things of that nature, some of the projects will be easier than others, but I do think we are going to see more of those as you go forward. I've reached my end. So with that, any questions, any comments, anything you want me to highlight? I want to keep it relatively short for you if you want to get moving.
Questions, anyone? I have one, actually. Have you and the rest of staff looked at 91801, which is the fence ordinance? Because it seems like, and I know, right? But I was thinking, as you were talking through it, and as I was reading through the packet, I was like, we had 2 fence variances requests, right? We had 2 property owners have to come through the process and pay a fee and do all this work through something that was really no fault of their own, right? They happened to own a corner lot instead of a inline lot, and in order to do the fence that seemed reasonable and they wanted to do, they actually had to get a variance, which doesn't really seem fair to them as a property owner. So anyways, I figured I'd ask the question.
Chair, excellent point. Those are the types of cases that I love to bring forward when we have a track record of variances that are regularly granted when an application comes forward. That is the type that then staff would bring forward potentially work session or workshop from City Council, see whether they want us working on that. Is this something pressing? And then if so, we would start that work and bring it forward when it would be convenient for a cleanup. There are cases, and I'm gonna try to stay out of bringing up a specific case, but when they're in the front yard, that is going to be a different case than what it would just be the side yard that's street side. There are significant number of properties in Wayzata where it would be applicable for a variance for a taller fence in the front yard. However, I don't know that we would want to allow a taller fence in the front yard when there isn't something special like the highway or other types of things. And I think that's an excellent case for a variance versus the opacity between the front of the house and the back of the house, which is where we currently have requirements. So the commission is where we have opacity requirements and a height requirement for when you're in front of the house. We have requirements from the front of the house to the back of the house, and then the back of the house to the rear yard. It is one of the more unique aspects of our code. However, it was something that City Council spent some pretty considerable time discussing in years past. Without a significant number of cases coming forward where variances are routinely granted, staff is not going to proactively bring that forward, but we've got a couple now that we could start looking at. The front yard ones, of which there were 2 last year, I think we would need to be careful because otherwise people could put in 100% opaque 6-foot tall fences in the front yard, and that starts to look less residential and more institutional or other commercial in nature. So great question. As we see trends moving forward with that, planner nerd in me loves bringing those forward. Don't worry, I will find them.
Cool. Thank you. Anyone else?
No, but thank you for that. It was a good summary. Appreciate it.
Very good.
Okay, so next item.
Next item, meeting schedule and development activities.
Meeting schedule, we've got City Council tomorrow night, June 2nd.
Yep.
Next Planning Commission, June 15th. Right now, I don't have something set up for the agenda, so we may be canceling that meeting. We have had 4 applications declared incomplete, so we have a backlog coming forward, be aware. It means summer meetings may end up being a thing towards the tail end, but for the moment, we want to make sure you have all the materials you need for your review when they come forward.
I have one question.
Yes.
Is anything more going on with the Wayzata Bar and Grill with the Muni? I know that, they did a study, and it seemed to me there was more stuff that was more imminent that was coming up.
Chair Cameron, Commissioner, why don't I get you something on the side for that? That is a
Sure.
great item of discussion. All of it would be interior, though, so it's kind of something that I can update outside of the Planning Commission.
Okay.
But we definitely have some updates for you. In terms of development activities, there isn't significant difference from the last meeting. I just want to make a couple of corrections. So Haley was doing her best from my notes. My handwriting is poor. Essentially, she had reported that the harbors of Wayzata, or Cantissimo, that property on the northeast side, right up against the border, had extensions out to late July. They do have extension into July, but they need to apply essentially in early June here in order to bring that forward. And they need to come forward to City Council to explain why they would need an additional extension, or they need to move forward with their application and building permit and signed development agreement. So they're right on the cusp of their approvals lapsing. The other one that was mentioned was Moments, and she had thought that that was also in July. That was actually late September, so it's September 26th. So they have some time. However, that property has gone into receivership. I don't anticipate that we're going to be seeing anything on it. It would be another one that, since we don't have a code enforcement case currently, I can speak to the fact that we will have code enforcement on that property. We've gotten a number of reports. So we've done our assessment, we will move forward, and any violations will be noted. But as I noted earlier, we won't have updates on what those code enforcement pieces would be. Other than that, there aren't significant changes. I would like to note that while people are moving into Wells Fargo, they're also at 90% leased already. So that's a pretty significant feat for that site. The townhomes are anticipated to open or be available as they come online late June, early July. You'll start seeing final site work hopefully by the end of the summer.
The 90% leased is the apartments,
Yes.
not the townhomes.
The townhomes, I don't have any data on the townhomes. Those were not ready for CO yet.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Anything else? Anybody? All right. Well, that concludes all the items on our agenda this evening.
Well, I'll do one quick touch-up then. that I meant to mention before. In front of you are brand spanking new bylaws. We will be emailing these out to you as well, but I know some of you still love physical copy. So these are your new bylaws. City Council did approve them with the amendments recommended by Planning Commission.
Cool. Excellent.
Chair.
Thank you. Tangible paper.
Thank you, Bob.
Cherish it. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Planton. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Elg. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is approved, and tonight's meeting, the June 1st, 2026 meeting of the Wayzata Planning Commission is hereby adjourned.